Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for day 2 of our video series, A Week of Blooms, featuring Penny Black's newest floral creative dies. And in today's video, I will be creating these 2 cards here, showcasing this new die in 2 ways. One using colored cardstock to create the layers, and another using painting and coloring techniques. So with these new dies, layering dies from Penny Black, like today's, which is 51-739 Splendid, you can get a beautiful look using either colored cardstock for your layers or painting and inking techniques, or you can combine both of them. Now, when I use colored cardstock, I do like to make it sort of a thicker, more substantial look. So I've cut everything from my colored cardstock, and then here I also cut it from a heavyweight white cardstock, and I just glue those layers on top of each other. This is a totally optional step, but I do think it really just makes it look so beautiful. And I love projects like this where I can do a whole bunch of die cutting in advance and then totally have Netflix going on in the background while I'm just cutting and gluing the pieces together. For me, this is the type of creating that allows my brain to just sort of go on autopilot and relax and cut and assemble. I can stop and start easily, work in just little short bursts of time, or when I have just a little bit of energy, and sort of have the project going over the week. So this is when I really like to just have my papers and my colored cardstock and my dies just ready to go. With these layering dies, the results, even with just colored cardstock, are so beautiful. I love how it makes it look like the flowers have shading and dimension without having to pick up any paints or inks when you're doing that. Now these little pieces go onto the blooms. You certainly, again with these, don't have to layer them up onto white cardstock, but I do think it just makes it look even prettier in the end, especially with like a heavyweight cardstock. And I'll have all my supplies that I've used listed down below in the YouTube description box. Now these just are really easy to glue on here, and they add a lot, again, sort of that shadow and dimension to these buds. And if you look at the packaging that comes with your die, or you can pause the video here and look at them, it makes it pretty easy to put them together onto the correct one. And honestly, if you put it on a different bud, it's still going to look fine. Nobody knows how I did it or how it looks on the packaging when you send your card off. So there you can see the dimension of that look. Now here I'm going to glue these 3 pieces together. So we've kept our layering dies fairly simple, about 2 or 3 pieces to the flowers, and you can just put that right on there. Once you've done it once, it's pretty easy to line them up. And again, just check out your packaging, hit pause here on the video, and you can put your layers together quite easily. And I just love how gorgeous that is. And I went ahead and created a couple of flowers just like this, and you'll see them in just a moment. Now I decided to work on my background, so I'm going to add a little bit of green to this background and some tan. So I put some green on my my ink blending tool and foam pad that I didn't mean to. So I just flipped over my background, and then am working on that here. Now all of the exact colors of the inks that I'm using are listed down in the YouTube description box below for you. I really love how the pink pops against this ink blended background. I'm starting off of the edge of my paper and working my way on in a circular motion. I use a fairly light pressure, especially with dark colors, and I build up the color by putting layers on instead of pressing hard right from the beginning, and that helps it just be a little bit smoother. Here I'm putting just an even darker forest moss green down in this corner, and these does not have to be perfectly smoothly blended because the flowers, as you can see, are going to go on top, and I just wanted some dark down in the corner so that these buds would contrast and show up down there. And you can see I just trimmed those apart so I could do my layering exactly how I wanted it down in the corner. And then I wanted some yellow, sort of a glow right here in the center. So I decided after I put those pink flowers on there, I wanted a little more contrast, and I'm going to add that. And I really love the way that these pink flowers just really pop on there. and how detailed they look when really it's just simple cardstock, colored cardstock layered together using that die set. And there you can see that design coming together. To finish this off, I simply stamped my sentiment from our new sentiment set, Thoughts and Prayers, and then adhered the flowers onto the card. And here is a look at that finished card featuring that new die using just colored cardstock to sort of add the shading and the dimension. So beautiful and elegant. Next, I decided to do a little bit of painting. So this is the same die with just a little bit different layout and technique. So I have cut all of the pieces from Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. And for this bottom layer, I wanted it to be very light. So on the last card, things were very saturated. I had that bold pink on the flowers and a very saturated inked background. And on this card, I wanted things just to feel a little bit more light and airy. So to keep this like a white almost, I am going to add though some shadow to it so it doesn't look like I just forgot to paint it. And it has a finished look. I'm going in with a light golden yellow here on this next layer. And you really can't do this wrong. Especially if you aren't sure what to do, just kind of stick within a similar color family. So like on the first cards, I did pinks and it was just 3 shades of pink. You can do the same thing if you're painting, or maybe you can ink these pieces. You could just ink them with distress inks and an ink blending tool and a foam pad if you don't like to paint. But you can see here I did sort of a white, then a light yellow, and here this is more of an orange on this piece here. They're all sort of in that same color family, and that will make it all work when they get assembled together. And I love that that leaves you then with so many possibilities. You could pick any color that you love or do lots of cards with different colors, all using the same die, but they're all going to look a bit different because you can change the colors. So as I'm working here, I decided I didn't want quite as much contrast between these two pieces, especially near the center. So I'm just going to darken up that, and I can just sort of set that on top and just keep playing. And with paint, I do love that you can really pick the placement of where you want the intensity or the darker shading even within one piece. So you can see this is darker towards the center and lighter as it moves out even on that one layer. Now here is the sort of leaves or the buds, and I've just used a piece of masking tape there. I did pat it onto my sweater before I put any pieces on it so it's not quite as sticky. And I'm using that to hold all these little pieces, and it makes it very easy to paint them. And so I used a lighter green on the larger piece, and then I'm just doing these in a little bit of a darker green. And I'm using Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors. So off camera I have a little palette, and I just put little drops of the Reinker onto that, and I'm picking them up with my paintbrush and a little bit of water. And again, all those exact colors that I'm using to paint will also be listed in the description box below. I decided I also wanted to add some butterflies onto this card, so I've cut some using our Soaring Creative die, and I'm going to go with some pink on these. So I'm kind of using similar colors as I did on the first card, but in smaller doses and not quite as sort of concentrated and heavy throughout the entire card. And I really like how both cards turned out. I'd love to know if you have a favorite. You could leave a comment down below if you have a favorite color scheme or a favorite version using the same die. Now I have picked up my Rusty Hinge Distress ink and added a little bit on top of those pieces once they were dry. And here I'm just adding a bit of antique linen around the edges of this base layer. And I think that just helps tie all of these together and give them a similar look. These are dry as well, and I'm going to add some Distress ink here just right on top. I also find this sort of, if you have any areas that seem a little bit blotchier than you want them to from your painting or from the way that it dried, just a few dabs with the Distress ink and an ink blending tool with a foam pad will sort of even that out, smooth it out, and give it a really pretty look. You can see here on the butterflies, I'm doing the same thing. Probably wouldn't have to do this step, but I enjoy it. So I'm going to use my fingers to sort of just curl up the edges of these pieces, give them a little bit of dimension. Everything is dry. So on the first card, I added some dimension and depth by layering them onto just a heavyweight white cardstock. On this, I am not doing that, but I'm only sort of gluing down the center and then allowing the other edges to be a little bit looser and sort of curled up using my fingers. And I love how different this looks, and I'm just matching up that one corner right there, and everything else will go right into place. And then I will glue on these pieces. I just put all my glue on first and then grab them and glue them on. To finish off this card, I am using our Zig Zag Stackers die. I really love having that stitched edge around to finish off the card. I've taped it off using washi tape, and I'm just using a bit of Memento ink, starting off of the edge and working my way on. And this masks off that die cut stitching look. And so when I remove this washi tape, it's just a really beautiful look. It adds extra dimension without any extra layers or bulk because that stitching is masked off. And when this is removed, it just looks really pretty. This is a go-to technique I use a lot when I have like a die cut piece that's done, but I want to find a way to put it on the card. And I just find this gives it a finished look. So my favorite part is pulling off that tape, and you can see there how fun that is. All I did then was stamp my sentiment. This is from 30-897 Thoughts and Prayers. And then I am adding these on using foam tape. I did put a little dab of glue on top of the foam pieces just because it gives me a little wiggle room once I put it onto the card. A little bit of time to wiggle it around if I don't get it in the right place. I embellished with those pink butterflies and some self-adhesive pearls, and this second card is complete. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as Instagram, our website, and blog, and all of those, as well as the Penny Black products, are linked down in the YouTube description box below. Thanks for watching.